On this episode of Cars with Cory, we are back on the 1990 F150. It's been a while since we touched on this project. I made a few quick repairs this summer because I had some issues, but I did them real fast and I didn't do them right. I replaced the starter and the battery cables, but lately it's been not starting properly. There's a few other miscellaneous issues that need to be addressed, so let's take a look. So starting off, we had to replace the starter, which I believe is probably original. I don't know, might have been rebuilt, but I thought it had a battery charging issue forever, but as it turns out it was actually the starter. So found a nice cheap eBay starter and threw that in. When I got into it, I discovered the solenoid was kind of having issues, so I did the right thing and bought a cheap solenoid at local parts store, and it melted down and fell apart immediately, so we ended up putting the original solenoid back on. From there, the battery cables were in real tough shape, so I had these universal ones kind of laying around, so did what I could do with what I had. The original cables are still in here, they're just laying around, but regardless, had to use an amplifier connector there and basically run it right underneath the exhaust manifold down there. So not done properly. I need to button this up and figure out what's going on with the starting system. It will start, but it cranks super duper slow, and it shouldn't. The battery was replaced at the time. It was back in July. Starter seems to be working okay, but we have some kind of connection issue somewhere. I believe it's probably either the solenoid or it could be the connection on the starter down below. Also could be the ground. I just temporarily smacked the ground right there. And that's really the only place it's connected. So let's dig through and do some diagnostics and see what's going on. Okay, so we're going to do some diagnostic here. So positive, negative of the battery. We got 12.18, which is okay, not great, but it'll work. I have hooked up a lone wolf here, so we're going to check and see off of the solenoid. This is the output. See if I can do this with one hand. There we go. I'm going to press the solenoid button and see what we get for voltage after the solenoid. So around 10 volts. And I'm actually going to move over to the front side of the solenoid where I wasn't. This one's hot all the time. So this one shows the battery voltage. We're going to press it again and see if we also get 10 volts. Okay, so looks like the solenoid's okay. We're passing 10 volts. We're going to check for some grounds next. So to check some of the grounds here, we're first going to check the battery. So we're showing 12.12 volts. Now we're going to move the negative around to different parts of the body to see where we get for voltage. So 12.11, looks like we're good there. We didn't get a lot of voltage drop. Now we'll move over to the alternator here. And looks like we're back to 12.13. Battery's kind of recovering. So we'll move from there. We'll move over to the hood hinge. See what we get there, 12.13. So with an assortment of grounds, it looks like our ground is okay, regardless of the fact that it's hooked to kind of a sketchy place. So next we're going to test the alternator. I have the meter hooked up to the battery kind of permanently here, or at least so I don't have to hold it. We're going to watch voltage. We should see a spike of 13 plus. After starting, we'll see it dip. So we'll go ahead and start it up. I've suspected there's been an issue with this alternator for a while. Alright, well we got 13.4, so as noisy as the alternator is, apparently it's not the issue, so we'll keep digging. So even though the alternator technically is charging, it's been noisy for as long as I've owned this truck, so I pulled it out and clearly it's not happy. I can hear all kinds of friction and sounds like loose ball bearings down inside of it, so I had another one. It looks worse than the one I have, but it spins freely. We got it mounted up. In the process, of course, we managed to crack the ear on the bracket down there, so hopefully that holds together, but we'll just pretend we didn't see it. I'll get this hooked back up and we'll start it up and see if it's going to work out. Actually, before we get any farther, I got the connector off and it's full of corrosion, so we'll clean that up before we slap it back in. The alternator is in. It's not necessarily fixed, but as my friends say, it's different. So we got the battery meter hooked back up. We'll go ahead and start it. Well, that alternator doesn't charge at all. Well guys, I have never played around with alternators, but I have two. One that kind of works but is noisy, and one that's quiet that doesn't work. So come along with me. I'll start tearing one of these down, probably the one that doesn't work, so I can at least still run that one if I absolutely have to. But start taking these things apart and see if we can make one out of two. Alright, progress. Sorry for the noise. It's winter, it's cold, and I'm running the heat even if you can't hear me well. So a little bit of an update. We got the brush kit off, busted one of the bolts, got the back housing off, busted 2 of the 3 bolts. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this piece of crap in the scrap bin and put the old one back on, I guess. It's noisy, but it charges, so we're gonna put that back on and see what else we can discover. Okay, well, we got the original noisy alternator back on. Sitting at 11.77 volts. Got the old Lone Wolf here, the key on. So let's see if this thing charges and see if that bracket that's cracked decides to fly apart. What do you say? Well, noisy or not, it charges, so all this video and we've accomplished nothing. So where do we go from here? Well, on the old ground cable that's still laying here, there's a body ground that is not present on the new one that hooks up right here in front of the battery. So to make a short cable out of some stuff we got laying around, and that'll help ensure our body's getting the ground as well as our engine seems to be good. I checked the ground several places and not seeing much current draw, so let's try that out. Okay, little 10 gauge amp cable. I had a little piece left over with some lugs soldered on and some overmolded shrink wrap, and we got a chassis ground or body ground. So it was hitting me as I was hooking this thing up. I'm like, you know, the intake is where our ground is, and you know, intakes don't have the greatest ground to the block, so it apparently is working, but I know that's not where the factory ground is. It's somewhere down in there, but maybe we ought to move that. I don't know. Maybe this little body ground will help. We'll see. But anyway, let's move on to the next thing. Check some fluids and see where this video is going to take us. Apparently not anywhere fun so far, just a bunch of me getting my ass kicked by this old truck. Yay! So as is typical with this thing, it is below the add 1 quart line, so we'll fill that up, but maybe we ought to crawl underneath and see where the oil's going. Okay, well, normally I run Ford Motorcraft, but I don't know how much longer this thing's going to last, so we're going to go with Power Sports oil. I got most of a quart here that we're going to use up. Sure, 540 will be just fine. Drink up, little guy. Drink up. Okay, well, seems to be an abundance of oil on the floor. Apologize for the glare and video quality, but that's how it goes as a YouTuber. I'm laying on my side underneath of a truck right now, so trying to facilitate light. But if we go up, we got oil all over the place. Looks like we definitely have a rear main leak. It's running down the starter, getting on the O2 sensor because it's running down the wires and all over the transmission lines, and I think the culprit is the oil pan gasket right there. You can see where it's clearly coming straight down, probably flinging it over on the starter. It's usually a drip of oil. There's my secondary abandoned battery cable just hanging out there in space, but clearly we've got a hemorrhaging oil leak. I don't know, maybe not hemorrhaging. I think it's been probably 6-8 months and 3-4 tanks of gas since I changed the oil, but well, now that I think about it, that is probably a hemorrhaging oil leak, so it's really not very far. If you know these things, they don't get very good gas mileage, so I think we'll just pretend we didn't see that and keep adding oil. Sound good? So you guys throw crap everywhere when you're working on stuff and just leave tools everywhere? Me too. Alright guys, well this didn't exactly turn out how I had planned. Really thought I'd get out here and get something fixed, but apparently this truck wants to fight me. I think it's telling me it wants a different engine. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. This one leaks like a sieve. You know, it doesn't have an incredible amount of horsepower. I'm pretty sure it's got a blown head gasket, although subtle and uses coolant very slowly. It's using coolant, it sure isn't leaking. So it's actually a pretty good truck. I don't necessarily want to just give up on it, but I don't really want to put any more effort into this motor. Hopefully you found, you know, everything up to this point at least a little entertaining, if nothing else. Sometimes in the shop things just don't go your way, and honestly I like showing everybody, at least in, you know, from what I've learned, what is the right way to do things. But this one here, you know, I put in oil that doesn't make any sense and kind of cobbled things together, which I don't normally do. But to be honest, I have to drive this truck just a few miles for the next week or so, and then I'm gonna make a call on exactly what I'm gonna do with it. So what do you guys think? I can get my hands on another 5.8 liter or a 302. 302's been sitting quite a while. The 5.8, well, I don't know much about it, but essentially I could put an engine back in it that came out of it. Could also do something like put on a carburetor, regular distributor, and figure out the transmission. I certainly could do that. I don't know if I'm as excited about that. Another idea I have is just swap a modern mod motor like a 4.6, probably not a 5.4, but 2-valve or 4-valve 4.6. I was thinking actually an Aviator with a 4-valve would be a good swap. It'd have the transmission for 4-wheel drive. I think the display and the electronics will work well with this truck. But anyway, put down in the comments what you guys think. I don't think this engine's worth a rebuild. It's so worn out, and I have more money in it than I really want to, when I could just go find another engine that already runs and probably spend less money. So let me know what you thought of this video. Like, share, subscribe. Appreciate you guys very much, and stay tuned for the next one.